6-7 years as to how to judge this stuff more accurately than what we are at the moment. The last guy, not someone I was planning on talking about initially, but when Corey was on last week and I asked him to give me your top 5 shooters in the draft, Hyunjung Lee's name came up, and he had him, I think he had him at the top of the best shooters, or at least in that top 5. So I thought, let's do a little bit of a dive into Lee, the 22-year-old 6'7" guard out of Davidson, who shot 38% from 3 last season. He's a 40% career shooter across 3 years. He averaged almost 16 points per game. He attempted over 6 threes per game. What's if Corey having him top 5 shooters in this class, is that insane? Is that accurate? Do you agree with that?
I would agree with the shooting premise. He is one of the best shooters that we have in this draft class. The problem is I have questions about literally every other part of his game. And I think that's really where I differ from Corey and Albert. Shout out to those St. Louis guys over the Draft Act podcast. That's where we differ on the evaluation. Like, there are some interesting passing flashes that Hyunjung Lee can show off the bounce. I don't think he's going to be able to do those same things at the NBA level. I don't buy any sort of athleticism from him. He's very stiff handling the ball, very upright. We come back to the same thing we talked about with Caleb Houston. If all he really is a movement shooter, are you drafting that guy very high? Like, personally, I'm not. And if I have even more questions about his athleticism, despite him being tall, he's 6'7", but if I have even more questions about his athleticism than I do Caleb Houston, I'm not going to rank him very high in this class. And then defensively, I don't think he's going to be much of anything at all. He's an interesting bet you can make as like an undrafted free agent guy. And if the shooting works out to the level that it did in college, where he's like a 40+% three-point shooter in the NBA, sure, he's going to get a cup of coffee in the league. He might even have a chance to earn a roster spot and then really have a role. But he's not a guy who I would want to draft. I think he's much better as like an undrafted free agent flyer.
He averaged less than 1 steal and block combined, which is not a great indicator defensively. But we've seen plenty of these guys that can work out. And your name, like my mind goes to names like JJ Redick, Kyle Korver, Seth Curry. But these are 3 of the best shooters literally of all time in terms of movement shooters and catching off screens and spot-up shooters. In there, going to consistently hit 44, 45%. Joe Harris, another name in there. Like, you're not doing anything else, but you're hitting their shots. And I don't think he's quite at that level. Like, we're not talking about a guy that's going to knock in 45% at the NBA level, probably. 39%, it's still really good, but you need to be at that absolutely insane level and getting off 10 or 12 three-pointers per 36 and hitting them at that level to have a team be able to scheme around some of those other weaknesses. And while he might be good, and 40% is good, it's not 44, it's not 45. And that's the difference there. Duncan Robinson, another one of those guys, where if you hit him at 40, and we saw this year, Robinson went down to like 37%, couldn't play him. He wasn't out there. When he hits him at 45, because it's so automatic, then fine. But if you start to drop off, then you can't do it. And these are not... they're not all the same type of player, obviously, but their main skill is absolute elite shooting. And if you're not hitting them at an absolute elite level, I'm not sure what else you're doing. And that's the number one question I ask with anybody. What else are you doing if this thing doesn't work? And the question's got to remain, I think, here for Lee.
And I agree with you 100%. And some of the other things that we could talk about with those other guys, like you mentioned Jay Jarrett, but like Seth Curry is also an underrated pick and roll playmaker as well. Like there are things that these other guys can do. And Duncan Robinson, you brought up as well. That was a great point you made about him just not being playable in some of these situations. If he's not knocking down shots, Duncan Robinson's a bigger player and a better athlete than Lee is. So that just goes to show you how hard it is. And I think if Lee would have shown a little bit more in the G League Elite camp and he had gotten some more opportunities and hit some more shots, I think we might be having a different conversation, at least in the public sphere. But the fact that he got some of those shooting opportunities and he couldn't even take advantage of that situation, I don't know how well it's going to speak to his NBA case.
I'm really interested to see. I think he's going to get some sort of undrafted free agent contract and summer league, and that'll be a huge opportunity for him. But maybe the end of a draft, I take a look at him, but I think that's sort of where he's going to sit. Nathan,